3:30, and he's the training and compliance manager now at Afta, as well as being one of the lead senior simulator instructors. Next man up is Jerry Humphreys. So Jerry is an ex-RAF Harrier pilot, and Jerry's been with us for a good few years now at this stage. He's in charge of the upset recovery training, so as you can see by his gear, he's used to being in an upset state inside an airplane, or at least flying it upside down quite a bit. He loves that kind of thing. That's his passion, and that's his thing, I suppose. Jerry has some very fascinating stories. Wonderful person to listen to, and had to leave because he had 2 ejections from the airplane. I believe his spine is compressed by something like a half an inch. That was him out. Philip is here this evening. Philip Smythe, and Philip has a very, very important role in the flight schools. Philip is the safety manager, so I suppose there's a misconception with a lot of light aircraft. You know, you see this thing kind of staggering into the air and you think, my God, how unsafe could this be? Well, it's quite the opposite. Actually, it's an extremely safe thing to do. The aircraft are very, very well maintained, and overseeing the safety of the flight school in every single level is Philip. Importantly for us as well, Philip is an Irish aviation examiner, some corporate jet flying, and he actually did some time at an airline some years back as well. So Claire is not here this evening either. She's back down in Cork. She's dealing with 300-400 applications for people trying to become airline pilots, specifically with Ryanair. So unfortunately she's well stretched at the minute. But Claire is an airline personnel selection professional. She's the student liaison, and she does the brand and the event coordination for us. If I keep moving on, just talking to you a little bit about the training programs, how to get started. Well, there's lots and lots of different ways to go training. The popular methods, I suppose, for the young guys and girls out there anyway, at least, is going to be what's called integrated pilot training. It's a one-stop shop, intense 16-month program where you come in at one end and you go through the rigorous processes of training to come out the other side, and we get you prepared then for an airline job, and away you go, hopefully, and have a great career. How do you get started? Well, you got to do aptitude tests. You need to have a little bit of a background in things like maths and physics. How much of a background do you need? Well, not that much. Just the common sense parts of it. I suppose some people will say common sense isn't all that common, but believe it or not, just a solid second level state of maths and physics will help. Good written English is also a good advantage, and the aptitude test itself, which is it's a difficult day out. It's quite difficult in that you've got to do your compass test in Cork, then you got to do a simulator check ride. It sounds very, very daunting, and then an interview at the very end. But I think importantly, we're not looking for somebody who can fly an airplane. We're looking for somebody who can be taught how to fly an airplane, has got a good attitude sitting in a cockpit, and has the enthusiasm and the passion to become an airline pilot, because 16 months in Cork is a huge, huge, huge commitment, and it's very, very intense, and it can be quite an isolating experience if you kind of disengage from the process. So having that hunger and that ambition and that enthusiasm at all phases in the flight training will work wonders for you. Moving on, talking about the aptitude test, it's computer based initially. So like I say, it's called compass test. It covers a whole host of different areas. We'll talk to you at the very end about that. There's a simulator check, like I say, not to know that you can fly the airplane, just to see that you can be taught how to fly the airplane. And obviously the interview at the end where we need to see that, yeah, you're in there for the right reasons. So, how does one get started? Well, I say this to everybody, you should, if you're thinking about this as a career, go get a flight somewhere. Sit in a light aircraft, get a flight, and if that bug bites you, then probably will never leave you. Those of us who fly airplanes love flying airplanes. Visit us, come down, see the flight school. It's an interesting place. It's a very dynamic environment, and we meet people. We ask people to come down and visit the school, walk around with us. We call it a show through. We show people through what we do there on a day-to-day basis, and that is it kind of culminates with you visiting the simulator centre. And maybe even if the sim is a little bit quiet, we'll get you with somebody like Garth or somebody at the back. He'll do a quick flight with you. Also very important, guys, get a medical. A lot of people have done some training and they've got to get a medical afterwards, and found out for whatever reason they may not, they cannot get a medical. So yeah, get a class 1 medical, do it in Dublin if you can, because it's good to keep the records in Ireland if you are going to go flight training in Cork. So I'm going to play a short little video, and I'm going to hand over to Kyle then. He's going to take you through the back half of the presentation. And thanks very much for taking the time to listen to me.
Okay, we're going to skip the video. It's not working, but it just gives you an overview of the flight school. Okay, so what I want to talk to you a bit about is Dan's giving you a bit of an overview of the flight school itself. So the question now is, how do I get into this thing called flight training? Okay, so what you need to do is, if you're intending on going to an airline to do this, as a job, then you need to become a commercial pilot. And there are a couple of different ways of getting there. The first one is the aptitude test. So, as Dan mentioned, there's a couple of key things in the aptitude test that we're looking for. Think of any aptitude test with us is not pass or fail. Think of it more as a measurement of you. And we're looking at, if you were to sit or start one of our training courses the following day, it gives us an indication of how you would actually do during that training course. So it gives us, an idea of how your ground school theory would go, how your flight training would go. Will you do it within a certain period of time? Will you do it on a certain budget? So, and we will feed that back to you at the end of the day, so you'll have a good idea of what's going on. If you're going for one of the mentor schemes with either Stobart or Ryanair, there is another step to it, and I'll come to that a little bit later on. You've then two ways of doing the training. One is called an integrated course, okay? Some people call it 0 to hero, okay? Well, what does it actually mean? It means you come in with nothing, and 16 months later, you come out with a license that allows you to fly to an airline, okay? There's then the modular training program, and that's more of a building block approach. You would do it bit by bit, and I'll go through each of them in a little bit more detail. So if we look at the integrated course, and Dan mentioned it, it's a full-time training course, okay? It's 16 months long. In actual fact, most people finish in about 14 and a half to 15 months, okay? We add another month in there because of Irish weather, as a just in case, but normally they would still finish it well within the 16 months. It's not an easy course. It's intensive. You're doing it in the absolute legal minima that you can do flight training to become a commercial pilot. So you're doing it in the minimum amount of flight hours, you're doing it the minimum amount of simulator hours, the minimum amount of ground school hours in a classroom. So all of those things are to the absolute minimum. Now what advantage does that have? Well, it means it gets you through the course as quickly as possible, out the other end, and into the career, okay? The other advantage is, because you're doing everything to absolute minimum, it keeps the cost down overall. But like everything, there's a downside to it, okay? And the downside is, what we're actually doing is we're probably packing 3 to 4 years of college or university into 16 months. So it's extremely intensive. Now, none of the content that you're going to study is difficult. None of it is beyond GCSE level if you're doing, on the education system in the north, or in the south, probably not beyond junior cert, okay? That's not the problem. The problem is volume of information in a very, very short period of time. It just keeps coming at you and coming at you and coming at you. And it doesn't slow down. And if you fall behind, you just gotta pick yourself up and catch up again, okay? So it doesn't slow. You've just gotta keep going, okay? We say it's like drinking from a fire hose. You just got to keep swallowing. Just keep going and keep going. So the advantage, as I say, is you complete it in the shortest period of time, it gets you out the other end, and you do it in the least cost, hopefully, okay? If you're looking at, well, what does that entail, or what is contained within the integrated program, just to give you a flavour of it, you'll do about 114 hours in a Cessna 172. you'll do 26 hours in the Piper Seneca, the twin engine aircraft. There's 40 hours of training in the Piper Seneca simulator. Most of it is instrument time. And then you'll do a minimum of 28 hours in the Boeing 737 aircraft. Okay? And what will be involved in it, not just teaching you how to fly, but we'll teach you how to work as a multi-crew, which is going to be very important once you move into the airline. And we'll teach you jet orientation, which means you're stepping up significantly in terms of the machine that you're operating. So, you know, you've seen the Cessna, you know, a single engine, piston aircraft, cruises about 100 miles an hour. Then you move up to the Seneca, twin engine aircraft, cruises about 200 miles an hour, weighs about 2 tons. Then you move up to a 737, cruises at 600 miles an hour, average weight about 65 tons, can go up to 38,000 feet and stay in the air for hours on end. Okay, so, and it's a significantly more complex aircraft. So those are the stepping stones to get where you want to go, and that's what we've got to try and cover during the course. The horrible bit, the ground training. Ground training is at least 50% of the course. Everybody hates it. Everybody wants to go outside on a sunny day and fly airplanes. Unfortunately, you can't all the time. You got to spend time studying in a classroom. Okay? We say for every 1 hour flying you do, you must do a minimum of 5 hours study. Okay? And in some parts of the course, that means studying for 12 to 14 hours a day. Okay? So it's very intensive. Just to put it sort of numbers around it, for the private pilot's license, you'd cover about 50 hours in class. The ATPL theory, the airline transport pilot, is a minimum of 750 hours in the classroom. You'll also do, for every flight you'll do a briefing beforehand, you'll do a briefing after. Depends on what type of flight it is, but you could be in a briefing for an hour before and an hour afterwards. You'll do multi-crew theory. You'll do things like buzzwords, threat and error management, cockpit resource management, and multi-crew philosophy. That's all covered in the ground school. So it's sitting in front of a classroom, or a bit like tonight, giving you death by PowerPoint, and you got to go away and study. Okay? How do we do it? Well, a bit like the way the airlines have gone, we do it by, we try to go as paperless as possible. So the material that you get will all be digital. It'll all be on the iPad. All your theory books are kept up to date. You download them out of iTunes, and they're kept up to date on a rolling basis. And they include all the latest bits and pieces. Like there's embedded videos there, and it was supposed to come out this year. Probably towards the end of this year, it'll actually be augmented reality in this stuff. So what you'll be able to do is you put your iPad on the desk, and let's say you're in chapter on engines. Well, if you look at your iPad through your phone, you will see a three-dimensional engine hovering in space, and if you click on it, it will come apart, and you can zoom in on it, you can spin it, do all sorts of stuff. It's the latest technology. That's the way things are going. Okay. Hopefully we'll have that by the end of this year, early next year. The course includes all of the equipment that you need: headset, map, bag, bits of uniform, and you'll see if you come down for a visit, all of our students are in uniform. Why? Well, that's what you've signed up for. That's the career. You'll be in uniform, so you might as well get used to it. It'll include all the flight test fees, examinations, all that type of stuff as well. So it's an all-inclusive training package. What it doesn't include are things like accommodation, keeping yourself fed for the period of time, and if you have to repeat anything, there are additional costs involved in that. The other way of doing it, so that's the integrated course, that's the full-time intensive, is you can do it by what we call the modular program. So what is a modular program? It's a building block program. You start with something like a PPL, private pilot's license. You do it part-time or full-time, and you build up a bit of experience, and then you add the next bit on, which is a night rating, and then you add another bit on, you go into ATPL theory ground school, and then you add another bit on, and so on, and so on, and so on. And you work your way, over a period of time through each of the steps, okay? So what are the advantages of this type of program over the integrated program? Well, the big advantage is that you determine the timeline. So you determine how quickly you learn. Okay, so you don't have to cram everything into 16 months. You can do it over a longer period of time, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Okay. Why would people select to do it this way? Well, maybe you've already started flight training. Maybe you've got a PPL in our building, you know, and you want to continue on from there. Sometimes you can't commit to full-time study with us. Okay, so you know, family commitments or part-time work or anything like that. Or sometimes it's just the finance. You can't come up with the finance all in one go. So, or spread over a very short period of time. So what you do is you spread it over maybe 2 or 3 years, maybe longer. Okay. The big thing about it is when you're comparing the two types of course, is that the license that you get at the end is identical. Doesn't matter whether you did it down the integrated route or the modular route. When you walk into an airline, the license is exactly the same. Okay? What you will have to explain to the airline or be put into your application is, okay, well, what way did you do the training? Did you do it on an integrated course or did you do it on a modular course? And then the next question they're going to ask is, okay, how did you do in your exams? And most airlines will ask for an average of about 85% in your theory exams. And then they'll say, how did you do in your flight test? And they'll be looking for first-time passes in your flight test. And then they'll ask, okay, well, how long did it take you to do the course? Okay, and what they're saying, if you say you did an integrated course, what they're looking for is an answer of 16 to 18 months. Okay, if you come out and say 10 years, they'll look at you strange and say, I don't know if this person is the type of person we want. Okay. If you did it on a modular course and you said I did it over 3, 4, 5 years, but I was working part-time or I couldn't finance it and I was building up the finance to do it, they'll pat you on the back and say, well done. We'll still have a look at you. There's no, you know, they're not going to hold you back in any way just because you did it modular. Okay? And then it all comes down to the assessment at the end. Okay? So, what are the disadvantages of doing it this way? Well, the number one thing is you decide the timeline. So what happens is 2 years becomes 3 years, becomes 4 years, becomes 5 years, and so on and so on. So you end up stretching it out. So you haven't one of us down your throat, dragging you through, kicking and screaming, saying, come on, you got to get this finished. You're just pacing it at yourself, and it can stretch it out. And of course, if you start to stretch things out, the costs start to go up. Why do they go up? Well, if you're only coming in to train with us, say every weekend, when you leave us one weekend and you come back again, we're going to have to do refresher training to bring you back up to the standard when you left us. And that will add up over time. That's a little bit all the way through. Also, legally, you've got to do more flying on this type of course, on a modular course, at least 50 hours more. So it can end up more expensive than a full-time course. Okay? So in that way, normally it takes longer and it costs more to do it that way. But that may be the option that you have to go. Okay? If I can sell a little bit, and hopefully you've done your research if you're interested in this, there's a number of flight schools in Europe that do these type of programs. We're just one of them. There's places in Spain, there's places in the UK and elsewhere that do them. Okay? So why would you choose to come to do it in Afta in Ireland? You know, especially looking at the weather out there today. Okay? Well, number one, all the training is done in one location. So we don't send you away anywhere else. You do it all in Cork or along the south coast of Ireland. Okay? So there's no problems with you know, having to get visas to go away somewhere else, or you know, arranging flights back and forward and all this type of stuff. It's all done in Cork, which means the oversight and the quality of the training should be very high. It's all done in one place. We do what we call real weather training. Why do we say real weather training? Well, if you can learn to fly in Ireland, you can learn to fly, or you can fly an aircraft anywhere. Okay? Whereas if you go off to Spain, you know, and you may not see some of those white fluffy things every now and again, you might be scared of them, or you won't get the crosswinds, or you won't get the rain that comes in sideways, or any of that type of stuff. Okay? Well, why would you learn in those places if you're not actually going to operate in those places when you actually become a commercial pilot? You learn to fly in the weather that you're going to operate in. And believe me, just like here, we get all 4 seasons in a day in Cork. Okay, so you will learn to fly in real weather, do real weather training. Okay. Another thing that we do is that the way we do the training itself is what we would say truly integrated. Again, if you do your research, you'll find that some flight schools will do all the ground theory, 6 months of it from day one, and then you'll do all the flight training afterwards. Okay. Well, human beings don't really learn well that way. We learn better if we do things practically and then apply the practical to the theory. And we've had people coming from those other flight schools saying, I sat for 3 months in a classroom, I was never in an airplane, yet I was sitting exams on how airplanes work and what's inside them and all those type of things. We sort of go, that's silly. Fly the airplane for a while, get used to it, and then come in and do the ground and basically learn from the practical. So apply the theory to the practical, not the other way around, and that's the way our whole training is done. We do additional out-of-program hours on the 737, so you'll get down a couple of times during your training to see how things work on the 737. So that's normally the basis of any of the jet training that we do. So any of the classroom theory stuff is on computers or hydraulic systems or electrical systems on the Boeing 737. So again, I can stand and give you death by PowerPoint on electrical systems or how to program the onboard computer. Okay, it could take a week. Whereas if I put you in the 737 simulator, sit you down and leave you for 30 minutes, you'll probably have figured it out a lot quicker. You'll type all the stuff in, you'll wipe it, you'll break it, you'll fix it, you'll put it all back in again, and you'll figure it out just by playing with the thing. Okay, so that's what we let you do. We put you in the simulator and we let you play with it. Okay, hopefully not breaking it, but play with it anyway. In terms of overall cost, and again, doing your research, what you'll see is if you're comparing like with like, so a self-funded integrated program with some of the other flight schools, you'll see we're a lot less. We don't cost as much. In fact, we're probably about 20% less. Okay. Now it's not because our standard is any lower or we cut corners or do anything like that. It's because in the south we're not allowed to charge VAT on training, so there's no VAT. Okay, so that's where the difference comes. The other flight schools, they do charge it. Okay. And then finally, one of the things we noted that we do differently to some of the other schools is that we noted that when you leave the flight school and you're applying for an airline and you're not on one of these mentored schemes or that, and you've got your license, we don't just kick you out the door at the end and say, thanks a lot, all the best out there, try it yourself in the big bad world, good luck. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. We don't do that, okay? We will actually try and help you find a job. Okay, we'll actively be searching for a job for you. Okay, and we'll help you with what we call a professional development program. Now, what does that entail? Well, what we'll do is we'll help you write your CV, and it'll be in the format that the airlines want it in. So when you put your application in, it looks correct. Okay, we'll help you with your interview technique, and there's 2 types of parts to the interview. There's what we call the technical side, so knowing things about airplanes and how they operate, and then there's the non-technical skills, which are more the people skills, and we'll prepare you for that. And then lastly, when you're going for an airline, normally they do a simulator assessment. So we'll train you in our simulator to come up to a standard that no matter what the airline throws at you during that assessment, you should be at a standard that you should be able to get through it. Now, we won't try and shortcut it by just training you specifically for the scenario, because the airlines change it all the time. So we will just make sure you are at a standard that no matter what they throw at you, you should get through it. Okay? And if you don't get it the first time, or with the first airline, we'll help you try again with the next airline. And if you don't get it again, we'll try again with another airline. Okay? So we just keep putting you forward or helping you prepare for those airline interviews. Okay? Just to give you some background student statistics, and Dan mentioned sort of numbers initially. Currently enrolled, we have 160 students on our integrated program. We just took in a class of 24 in September, about 3 weeks ago. We're already up to about 14 or 16 for the November class, and we're expecting to take in classes every second month next year. Okay. On the modular students training to commercial level, we have about 60 students working their way through that, and then we have other students that are just there to learn PPL for recreational flying. They don't really have an interest in going fully to commercial. Over the last sort of 20 years, we've trained to commercial level about 1,700 students. Okay. What is the career prospects? Okay, so I've paid maybe a large sum of money out. Okay, I've got to start paying back possibly the bank of mum and dad, or granny and granddad, and half the rest of my family. So what are the career prospects? What are the chances of getting into an airline? Very, very good at the moment. So just to put it in sort of reasonable numbers, so there is a world shortage. You may have seen it in the news. Yeah, it's not a lie. There is. There are aircraft sitting on the ground in airlines with nobody to fly them. In terms of in Europe, sort of in the next 15 years, they're going to need 95,000 new pilots. Okay, that's the sort of numbers that are out there. And if you look at the Middle East and Far East, it's bigger again. In terms of, you know, who we're recruiting for, we launched was Ryanair. Ryanair, and this number has actually just gone up. Ryanair needs 17 new pilots per week. Okay, so they normally they will assess about well over 1,000 pilots a year, and they will take on between 600 and 800 per year. Okay, they've just put an order in for 150 aircraft. They just received 4 brand new aircraft in the same day directly from Seattle. So, you know, it's unheard of. Those are the numbers that are out there. Okay. In terms of what we're currently doing is we'll graduate about 2 people a week. So we can't fill the numbers. And that's just Ryanair. There's other airlines that are actually phoning us saying, do you have anybody? And we're having to say, well, you know, they're all spoken for. What's the potential earnings? Now we did a broad look over the internet, looking at some of the low-cost carriers, and these are the type of airlines that are going to take you on as a low hours pilot, around about the 250 hours. So year 1, you're probably talking, and these are base salaries of about 45,000. Year 2, 55. Year 3, 70. You can put another 10 to 12,000 on top of that for flight pay. Okay. Once you become a captain, and people sort of say, you know, in the old days, your British Airways, 20 years, maybe, if you were lucky. Aer Lingus was, what, 7 to 10 years to become a captain. Ryanair currently it's 3 to 4 years, okay, to become a captain. Stobart Air, it's 2.5 years to command, okay? So, round about the 2,500, 3,000 hours mark, and you'll do about 800, 900 hours per year, figured out that way. That's the sort of, you know, time to get command. Salary for command, base salary, junior captain, about 90,000 before flight pay. Okay. If you go up, senior captain, training captain, or anything, it can be a lot higher. Okay. And there are just a couple of websites that are useful just to see what's currently happening in the industry in terms of openings and salaries. A lot of people that are in the airlines, they post that type of stuff. Okay, now down to what Dan mentioned at the beginning, and it's only in recent, is our airline training partners. So we announced sort of 2 training programs. The first one is Stobart Air. Now you won't ever see a Stobart Air aircraft. Okay, they're not a normal, what would you say, airline as such. You won't see that sort of tail anywhere. What they do is they lease out aircraft and aircrew to other airlines. So currently you'll see them as Aer Lingus Regional, so flying the turboprops out of here. You'll see them as, I think it's Norwegian, it's an internal Norwegian, or
Flybe.
Flybe is the other one. And there's a couple of other smaller ones. They do CityJet as well. So we launched this back a number of months ago. Stobart, what they're looking for is around about 20 students per year on a mentorship. Now, what does that mean? Well, or what are they looking for? Well, they're looking for guys and girls that want to start on the ab initio program and will follow an integrated training program. Okay. What do you have to do to get in? Well, you come to us and you do an assessment. Okay, and they've set out certain minima in the assessment process the day in order to be put forward. If you pass the assessment with us, then you go and do an interview in Stobart HQ in Dublin, and then they will look at a number of people, and then they will make you a job offer if you're successful. Okay, so what they will say is, based on, it's a conditional job offer, like anything, is if you do well during your training, in other words, you have good theory results, you do well in your flight tests, and you've good technical and non-technical skills, then they will say, and you complete the program, we will offer you've got a job at the end of it, basically. The program itself, it is self-funded, okay, but what they've said is they will cover the cost of the type rating, but they will bond you, okay. What is a type rating? Well, the type rating is you leave our flight school with a commercial license to fly any airline, but it's not specific to an aircraft. So what you then do is a type rating, which is how to fly their airplane their way. Okay, so it normally takes about 3 to 4 months of training. So they're going to cover the cost of the type rating, which is normally 25,000, something like that. But in return, they want you to stay with them for a period of time, so they will bond you for 4 years. Okay, you can buy yourself out if you want, but the bond ends at the 4-year period. Okay. More recently than that, we signed with Ryanair. We're the only flight school that is now an official training partner with Ryanair. How many students are they taking? As many as they can get. They want 450 students through Afta in the next 5 years. Okay, so they will take them on a continual basis. So it's just as you come in and as you are assessed, they will just keep going and going and going. Okay. What are they looking for? Well, there's sort of 2 ways in. The first one is they'll be looking for ab initio students, those who haven't done any flight training at all, same as Stobart, okay? And you'll follow an integrated training program, the same as Stobart, and you have the same pretty much conditions as Stobart in terms of results and things like that. Or there is an alternative gateway. If you have already started flight training, or you're even close to the end of your flight training, you can still come in through us on this program. So you can come in, if you're a PPL holder, private pilot's license holder, if your ATPL theory done, you have about 170 hours total time, 100 of which are solo. You can come in at that point, and what you do is you do an assessment with us. If you're successful, then you do your multi-engine class rating, your commercial license, your instrument rating, and your multi-crew with us, and then you're offered a job by them. Or you can come in on the completion of your MEP CPLIR, which is the next stage. So you haven't done your multi-crew or your jet orientation course. Similar way to do it is you do an assessment with us. If you're successful, we will put you through what they call an extended MCC course called an APS MCC. If you're successful in that, you will get a job. Or you can come in fully qualified. So you already have done the CPL, commercial, the instrument rating, multi-engine, you've done the multi-crew and JOC, okay? And you could say, look, I wanted to do a flight instructor qualification, and flight instructor qualification just gets you an extra step up within the airline. So you come in, you do the flight instructor with us over 2 years, you're continually assessed, and then when you come out the other end, you go directly into Ryanair. You'll do 2 or 3 years with them as a basic first officer, but then the chances are very good that you're likely going to be into the training side of things in the airline. So you could be a simulator instructor or a type rating instructor, and you will move up through the ranks very quickly if you have an instructor's rate. Okay, so that's the other way in. In all cases, you will have to do an assessment. A little bit different to Stobart is Afta will be doing the assessment. There is no going to Dublin to Ryanair HQ to do the assessment. We do it. So when you come down to do the Ryanair assessment, it's us that's doing it. Okay. And if you're successful through the assessment, then you're given a conditional job offer. And again, just like the Stobart program, it's going to be based on how you do during the program. So theory results, flight test results, technical, non-technical skills. Okay, all of that. It is a self-funded course again, but the great thing is you already have a conditional job offer in your pocket. So as long as you do well during the course, I've got a job coming out the other end. Okay. The type rating, they are willing to put a lot of money towards it themselves, but to make sure you're interested and you're in the game, they want you to cover €5,000 to do the type rating, and then you'll be bonded for 3 years. Okay, so that'll be the final step going into the airline. Okay, and then you're qualified. Okay, just to give you an idea of where a lot of our students go. Well, those that are self-sponsored up to this point, 70% of our students go to Ryanair, 20% Norwegian, and then 10% are a mix of the others, sort of CityJet, Stobart Air, Flybe, Aer Lingus, EasyJet, Jet2, and there's a few more in there as well. You get 1 or 2 going further afield. Okay, but mostly anybody coming out of our flight school with the low hours will go into sort of the lower cost, middle cost carriers. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. Thanks a lot for your time. Hopefully we've given you